Good morning. It is Tuesday, September 27th. I'm Lauren Prisville.
And I'm Tim Ryan. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump debated one-on-one finally last night.
Okay, so this was the first of 3 scheduled debates between the two. They touched on trade, police, community relations, racism. Conversation turned to terrorism and national security and who is best able to lead the country.
You have so many different things you have to be able to do, and I don't believe that Hillary has the stamina.
Let's let her respond.
Well, as soon as he travels to 112 countries and negotiates a peace deal, a ceasefire, a release of dissidents, an opening of new opportunities in nations around the world, or even spends 11 hours testifying in front of a congressional committee, he can talk to me about stamina.
Let me tell you.
Vice presidential nominees, Governor Mike Pence and Senator Tim Kaine, have their only debate a week from tonight.
Dr. Jeff Engel, director of the Center for Presidential History at SMU. True believers in either him or her were certainly not swayed. That's not who they were going for last night.
No, and this is a really important point that we want to think in this country about winners and losers. We're a very competitive country, but at the end of the day, what mattered were the 15 to 20% of voters who tuned in trying to figure out who they'd want to vote for. Right. And it was a fascinating exchanges all the way through.
From what you heard and what you saw, she was going after who and he was going after who? Because they weren't probably the same audience.
No, she definitely was going after the voters who might think that perhaps Trump is just not fit to be presidential, just not a person who is capable of holding his words together, capable of holding his temperament together. And she, on the other hand, was trying to demonstrate that she was a person who they could trust.
Now, there's in conservative circles, there's a dirty term. It's called worldview, and that was certainly in play last night. Donald Trump says the United States, for example, can no longer afford to be the police department for the entire world. Listen.
Go down the list. We defend Japan. We defend Germany. We defend South Korea. We defend Saudi Arabia. We defend countries. They do not pay us what they should be paying us because we are providing tremendous service, and we're losing a fortune. That's why we're losing. We lose on everything. I say, who makes these? We lose on everything. Well, I said that it's very possible that if they don't pay a fair share, because this isn't 40 years ago where we could do what we're doing. We can't defend Japan, a behemoth selling us cars by the million.
We need to move on.
Wait, but it's very important. All I said was they may have to defend themselves or they have to help us out. We're a country that owes $20 trillion. They have to help us out.
Let me start by saying words matter. Words matter when you run for president, and they really matter when you are president. And I want to reassure our allies in Japan and South Korea and elsewhere that we have mutual defense treaties and we will honor them. It is essential that America's word be good. And so I know that this campaign has caused some questioning and some worries on the part of many leaders across the globe. I've talked with a number of them. But I want to, on behalf of myself and I think on behalf of a majority of the American people, say that, our word is good.
That's a tough sell, especially to the Donald Trump crowd. They're saying, to heck with the rest of the world, we need to worry about ourselves first. And that's why he is where he is.
Well, and this is really his appeal, remember, that he's going to say, I need to make America great by using a business approach, a dollars and cents approach. But here, I think, is a moment where we need to take a step back and say that there's a reason that American foreign policy has been constructed the way it has since World War II with our leadership. There's more than just dollars and cents at play here. If the world is simply reduced to who is paying for our services and who chooses not to pay for our services, that's a recipe for an arms race. And that's a recipe for the kinds of things that will erode American leadership around the world. And this is a really important thing for people to consider, that if Donald Trump is going to present himself as an agent of change, as a person who's willing to throw out 50 years of American foreign policy, we need to ask ourselves, hasn't 50 years of American policy kept the world from a global war since the middle of the 20th century?
Donald Trump, for the most part, kept his temper under control. There was a couple of little needling points, and she kept using his own words against him. For example, on the birther issue, whether or not President Obama was in fact born in this country.
the birth certificate was produced in 2011. You continued to tell the story and question the president's legitimacy in 2012, 13, 14, 15,
Yeah.
as recently as January. So the question is, what changed your
Well,
mind?
nobody was pressing it. Nobody was caring much about it. I figured you'd ask the question tonight, of course, but nobody was caring much about it. But I was the one that got him to produce the birth certificate, and I think I did a good job.
Well, let's take him at his word for a second.
Okay, yeah.
Let's
I mean,
say,
he's declaring victory, saying, I'm the one. You're welcome, world. You now know.
and let's take him at his word and say, which I don't think is actually accurate in this case, but let's say that he's the one that got Obama to produce his birth certificate in 2011. We're in 2016, and we're
Right.
still talking about this issue. He is the one who kept the issue alive after Obama had produced not only the short form, but then the long form.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a real sense in which this is just a question of questioning the legitimacy of this man to be President Obama, which really undercuts, I think, the support that he has within minority communities. I'm talking about Trump.
You said in your note to us if you had to score it, it was probably a draw. He did not lose his temper as he did in some of the primary debates and as he has done in other situations. He did go a little bit off plan script when he was asked about who hacked the Democratic National Committee.
I don't think anybody knows it was Russia that broke into the DNC. She's saying Russia, 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 but maybe it was. I mean, it could be Russia, but it could also be China. It could also be lots of other people. It also could be somebody sitting on their bed that weighs 400 pounds, okay? You don't know who broke in.
Ouch.
Well, I'm reminded of something that Andy Card, who was chief of staff to George W. Bush and had worked in many White Houses before, used to talk about his major piece of advice to presidents, which was chew your words carefully before you use them. Because when the president speaks, it has meaning, it has matter. Even the offhand remarks have meaning. And in the middle of a discussion of cybersecurity, Donald Trump decides to insult fat people,
right,
for no apparent reason, except that his brain doesn't seem to be capable of stopping himself from making these extra statements that if they were about nuclear arms, or if they're about cybersecurity, or if they're about terrorism, or about the banking system, if a president says something, it will reverberate around the world. And I think he's still struggling to keep his extraneous thoughts under control.
And it'll be fascinating to see the next one coming up not too distant future, and we'll see whether anyone has changed anybody's minds or whether any behaviors change.
Well, we'll be doing this again.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Jeff.
Good to see you.